Our meeting tonight is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through the study and practice of Christian Science. Tom from Iowa, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig, for those fine readings tonight. I love the readings tonight. I am grateful to God, the holy prayers of my practitioner, and the Plainfield Church for all that I am learning in this church. Thank you for an excellent Bible study and roundtable. I love the readings of Pilate describing Jesus. They were very inspiring. God bless you all and have a good night.
Thank you. Ella from Canada, go ahead, please.
Good evening. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the practitioner's work and her being able to put into words how I needed to focus my studying. Though I get quiet as I am processing what I have heard, my heart and mind are very appreciative of every aspect of what is said to me. Last Friday, I was in my bedroom alone when I was not able to breathe. I could not inhale. I tried to inhale 3 times. Then I stopped trying to inhale, and I mentally affirmed that God is my life. Within seconds, I could breathe again. Thank you to all for all that you do to serve God. Good night.
Thank you. Mara from Mississippi, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Craig, for the readings tonight. I love how Christian Science is such a fearless way of life when we understand how God is always here for us. Tonight, I'd like to say how thankful I am for all that I'm learning. I've been working through a terrible habit of feeling offended by people's negative accents or comments, taking things personally and having a very hard time forgiving, and instead find myself thinking negative, depreciating thoughts of myself and others. I've been working on this with my practitioner. I have been studying 2 main articles written by Mary Baker Eddy from Miscellaneous Writings that my practitioner has recommended, Taking Offense and Love Your Enemies. I always feel better after listening to them, but soon after, I often catch myself thinking the same negative thoughts. I discussed this with my practitioner, who reminded me that I'm the only one suffering with this. As Ms. Eddy states in the article, Taking Offense, quote, "The mental arrow shot from another's bow is practically harmless unless our own thought barbs it," end quote. And we should never feel offended unless, quote, "the offense be against God," end quote. There's one family member in particular that I was feeling these negative thoughts about. I kept thinking about the past several years and all the terrible, hurtful things she did and said about me. And when I recently called her to mend our relationship, instead, our conversation ended with her bringing up things about my parents from my childhood that made me feel worse, not better. One day, after months of feeling these bad feelings about her and trying my best to pray about it, I thought about her and who she really was, God's child, the expression of love and goodness. And this time, all the bad feelings about her instantly disappeared. It was such a relief, and I felt so thankful to God. I also was directed to call her, but I wanted to wait and continue to pray about it to make sure God would direct me what to say. The next day when I did call her, we had such a lovely, open conversation. I was able to express my feelings to her. She apologized to me. We were able to talk about God and ended the conversation in such a loving way. This to me was another beautiful example of how God is always there for us, helping us and directing us. We just have to be ready and trusting Him and having patience and persistence and faith in Him and courage for their thoughts. I'm so thankful to Mary Baker Eddy for discovering Christian Science and Christ Jesus for showing us how good God is. I'm so grateful to my practitioner for all her help and guidance, and thank you to everyone at Plainfield for all you do.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for reading part of the Sermon on the Mount tonight. It was very beautiful. I want to express my gratitude to be here tonight and for the many blessings that have come from participating in the roundtables, Bible studies, and testimony meetings. I am grateful to be living today because of the prayers of my Plainfield practitioner, and I'm very grateful to be able to be part of a healing influence in the world and to be able to give back to God. I am so grateful for all I have witnessed in my life and others of healings such as strep throat, injuries, jobs found, colds, coughs, relationship issues, and many, many more. I'm grateful for the character changes that are taking place in my life. I can't imagine living without Christian Science, for Christian Science is the answer to all problems. I am so grateful for Christ Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy for all that they did and sacrificed so that we could have this pure science of the Christ. And I'm also very grateful for the Plainfield church workers who have, and all they went through, all they sacrificed, and the hard work, so this pure science could continue today. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael from Canada, go ahead, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Greg, for the amazing readings. They lifted me right up. I loved the excerpt from that sermon. You encouraged me to read the whole sermon. I am sending my heartfelt gratitude today for the Bible studies and the Sunday morning roundtables that this church is offering, and for all who work to make them happen, and the practitioners who guide these activities. I learned so much through them. Before I came to Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, I was reluctant to read Bible commentaries. I thought because they are not written by Christian scientists, I shouldn't read them. Now I am hearing Bible commentaries being quoted at the Bible studies and roundtables. This encouraged me to start looking up Bible passages on BibleHub.com. I am amazed that sometimes, not always, but sometimes I can find answers to the questions I have about Bible stories. Sometimes the commentaries help me to understand Bible passages better. Sometimes I don't find answers or I can't agree with what is published in these commentaries, but that is okay. I look at it now as it is said in Thessalonians 5:21. Quote, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Quote end. This practice to search for the meaning of Bible passages in commentaries has not only helped me to go beyond the mere reading of the Bible lesson, but also has opened my mind in the way that although Christian Science is the absolute truth, there are other people, writers and scholars that got glimpses or parts of the truth. I can read and use these resources so far as they bring me closer to God. I feel now that they are valuable if they make me feel the oneness with my Father, Mother, God. And as in the message for 1902 of Mary Baker Eddy, page 4, line 3, it says, follow your leader only as far as she follows Christ. In that sense, I can say now, I follow the Bible commentaries only as far as they follow Christ. I'm very grateful for this experience, for all the Bible studies and roundtables and how they have helped me gain a better understanding, and for all Christ Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy have given us. Have a good night.
Thank you. Shardy.
Good evening. I offer my gratitude tonight for God's protection and the power of prayer. I am learning more about both here at Plainfield Church Independent and also through the guidance of my practitioner. It is April, the month when my first baby was born, and I was thinking about how grateful I am. Many years ago, when I was newly pregnant with my first daughter, I visited Cape May with my in-laws. My husband was on a business trip. While I was swimming in the ocean, I was unexpectedly hit by a huge rogue wave, and when I got to shore, realized something was very wrong. My in-laws were practicing Christian Scientists, and I knew they were praying for me. The obstetrician said there was nothing to do, nothing to be done, and just to go on with my natural life and activities. I didn't believe that. I was hopeful and calm. I was a very new person in Christian Science and didn't have a practitioner. But my own in-laws did. A dear, holy man who a few years later actually came to my home to teach me about Christian Science, Mr. Campbell. Today, that baby is a mature woman with 2 grown children of her own. She has a small, thriving business with 2 employees, and she is a golf enthusiast. How great is our loving God. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I'm very grateful tonight for all that I've learned here about Christian Science. I was remembering today about how much of an aggressive driver I used to be before being healed by Christian Science and practitioner support. It was a real problem for me because it would ruin my ability to simply appreciate the scenery and the time I had with others in the vehicle. That impatience showed up in other ways as well, and it was like I was perpetually unhappy about not being somewhere else. Or it might be more correct to say I was upset that I had to deal with the boring and annoying parts of the day. It's like I always wanted to skip ahead. So coming to Plainfield and learning that it is God who places us where he needs us, and God who sends us where we can be of use to him, and it is God's time that we must conform to, began to help me let go of that impatient urge. What Mary Baker Eddy wrote about obedience in miscellaneous writings has been of constant help, as has my practitioner's advice to slow right down when the urge to rush comes. And honestly, just seeing how my practitioner has patiently and lovingly dealt with many situations here at church has helped. So I'm very grateful for this healing and grateful to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have a testimony from Imogen in Australia.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this inspiring meeting during the week. I find it is so needed, and I am very, very grateful each week to this pure independent Christian Science church for giving us this spiritual refreshment throughout the week. The Unity Watch from Tuesday was absolutely beautiful and read so lovingly by dear Linda. It was all about peace and featured a much-loved hymn. Hymn 277, quote, "Peace be to this congregation. peace to every heart therein. I used to think of myself as someone who did things very quickly, if slapdashedly, a high-energy kind of person. I was always trying to do everything well. My to-do lists each day usually led to frustration if things didn't happen quickly or according to my time frame. Indeed, before coming to learn at this church, this sense of personal frustration would cause me to feel angry, which is not a good feeling at all, as it always would take me away from God. The pure Christian Science that is taught at this beautiful independent church is transforming my character. I am very grateful for this. I wanted to give thanks tonight for one of the many teachings here that has helped me overcome that rushing is animal magnetism. This was just like a light bulb to me when I first heard this taught at a round table at this church a few years ago. Learning at this wonderful church, I have come to realize that my entire life, each little one of my footsteps each day, are not to be dictated by rushing, but to be absolutely governed by God's ever peaceful and loving orbit. I can be lifted by the wings of an angel onto the rock of Christ, and all the rush cannot touch that poised and peaceful rock, so long as my thought is stayed on God, our great and wonderful and loving Father, Mother God. Now I am far from perfect. The temptation to rush or be humanly frustrated or disappointed still comes. It came today. But I have been taught how not to be swept away with that feeling, and the selfless, loving, and Christly prayers of my practitioner at this church have helped me so much in this regard. Truly, I am learning to put my foot down on anything that is not of God, to stay with His love and His peace no matter what. And for this I am eternally grateful. This church has come to mean the world to me because through the loving, faithful work of our practitioners, teachers, and workers here, I only need to pop my earbuds in and I can listen to all manner of holy, Christly teachings in pure Christian Science that have been lovingly and freely given to all, so that anyone who is searching for God's love and peace can find it. I thank God. I thank Christ Jesus. I thank Mary Baker Eddy. I thank our holy practitioners and teachers here, and a special thanks to our beautiful singers, both big and small, dear blessed singers and musicians, all on Easter Sunday. Our dear church, you have helped us so much. We thank you all so much, and so much love to you all.
Thank you. Bruce.
So I love the watching point that's featured on our website this week. Among the many things that Mr. Carpenter talks about, he talks about Moses having to face the serpent and handle it, because the story goes, a serpent appeared. Moses wanted to run away from it in fear. Instead, he got the direction from God to turn around and handle the serpent, and he picked it up and it became a rod. I guess one time I was one that really wanted to run away from circumstances that I think were unpleasant, instead of facing them and finding a resolution for them. It seemed like this fear was one of the things that was one of my driving forces at one time, until I had the amazing blessing of finding Christian Science here in the Plainfield Church. Shortly after I joined the church and came here, I was able to find a job that was close by and it was in my field, and I was very grateful for it. But it proved to be very challenging. And at one point in time, it was so challenging that I wanted to quit and leave. But fortunately, I called up a practitioner that was here in the church and explained what was going on. And she gave me a few brief words very strongly and directly. And she says, "You better be grateful you have a job." And when I heard that, it gave me the confidence to go back there and get whatever blessing was in that experience for me. And I didn't feel terrified about it, but I felt confident about it. I had the confidence to go back to that job and learn whatever it was I needed to learn. And as it ended up, the job didn't last that much longer. But one thing that did last forever since then was this determination of knowing that God has a resolution for every problem. And no matter how fierce or fearsome the problem may appear, that's nothing more than appearance. And I shouldn't allow that to instill fear in me or any other harmful emotion, but rather should it be an opportunity to stir up my confidence in God and strength in Him and the willingness to do whatever He instructed me to do or to learn whatever it was for me to learn. And this has been an amazing blessing, and I must say that I learned it through Christian Science here in this church. And for that, I am endlessly grateful. Besides this confidence in God, I have other companions I'm very thankful for, and they are love and joy and gratitude. And I have to say I'm so thankful for this church and Christian Science for introducing me to those wonderful companions.
Thank you. Gary.
I'm very grateful for all the lessons, many lessons that I've learned in this church and am still learning. And one of the lessons that I'm very grateful for is to get over the feeling that I needed to be in control of my life. And by that I mean, when I came here many years ago to Plainfield, I wanted to understand everything that I was doing so much that before I would do anything, I wanted to make sure I understood the whole process and what the outcome was going to be. And what I often did was, when faced with a situation where I had to make a decision or a problem that I had to deal with, I would sometimes study it to death. And then when it was time, when I was ready to do something, it was sometimes too late. Sometimes it was wrong. Sometimes it was both. But it was a wonderful practitioner and teacher in this church that taught me that that was not the way to go about things. I began to learn that God is the only one who can and does control our lives. And it's foolish to think that I could actually control anything, either in my own experience or outside of my own experience. And I was taught that whenever I am faced with a situation, a decision or a problem, really the only way to deal with it is to quietly listen to what God has to say, and then when He has an answer, to move on it immediately. And in that process, I learned that the only thing that I should control is my own thinking, and not let extraneous thoughts, other than thoughts from God, influence me. And that's a lesson that I'm still learning, but I'm so grateful to be learning it. In Psalm 119, verse 105, it states, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." Well, that's a promise from God. And he makes good on his promises. And he guides us correctly, even when we can't clearly see what the final outcome is. And it reminds me, we have this hymn in our hymnal that says, one step enough for me. So I'm very grateful to be learning that God knows what's best for us, for me, and what is right for me, and to be learning to trust in him. And this has made a great difference in my life. I find I generally, in many cases, do make right decisions more often, get things done in time more often, and I know that learning to trust and relinquish control to him can be a leap of faith sometimes, but it's a wonderful leap of faith and a wonderful discipline to be learning. And I'm so grateful for all the examples and the teaching that I've had in this church, and grateful to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you. Craig.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a testimony about the Sermon on the Mount. What I read today, unbeknowingly, it's a law for everybody. And when I first came to this church, just as 1978, yes, I sometime after moved here. And I didn't have much. But when I found this church in my naivete or neophyte, whatever, I just loved it. And I said, this is the most important thing, and this is going to save the world. Well, I'm sure Mr. Baker, you knew that already, but I just loved it. And whenever I had a need, God provided it. I never missed a rent in probably ever, because God always gave me a job. Okay, I was a trained engineer, but more important was to get my focus on what God wanted me to do, which was later I found to be a trained engineer. But he always made sure I had a job, I had enough to pay my rent, and I was basically happy for all those, and I was fully happy all those years. And that's God taking care of your needs, because he knows you need them. And without a bunch of wailing about, I gotta have this and that. So it does come true. Just by the fact of you want to do what is right and what he would want you to shine at, everything else will be met. So I just wanted to give the testimony, because I've been seeing it for so long. And as time goes on, I get the opportunity to trust him a little more. I hadn't been tithing completely until the last couple of years, but I find that, you may not know where money's coming from, but if you do right, you will have what you need, and it has worked. And I thank God for showing these things to me. I just got another job, which is an answer to my need for tithing. After retiring, I now have a pension, Social Security, another job, and things just keep flowing in. So I thank God for showing me these things just by seeking first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Craig for reminding us about the Beatitudes. I love the theme, fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. This is speaking to all of us. I think at times I used to feel, and now I see others who come with the feeling of unworthiness, that they're not worthy to have God's blessing. And here it tells us not to fear, because it is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And as the Lord's Prayer says, the kingdom is already within each of us. We have to awake to know that it is within each one of us. I'm so grateful for this, because it changes life when you're really constantly knowing it. And Mrs. Eddie also has told us to remind ourselves of the Beatitudes in at least once a week, I believe is what she says, to remind ourselves of the steps from which we can gain this beautiful kingdom that God has given us, or become aware of it. I have a short testimony from Germany. And she says that to those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings. Begins the 1910 version of Science and Health. Today, this statement played a great role in letting God direct me in teaching my classes. I love teaching and I love learning. I have learned that teaching art has challenges when I let myself get in the way. This means I have to continue to lean on the sustaining infinite that loves each and every one of us. In preparation for my classes today, I also listened to the Plainfield reading of Dorothy Reeky's Wonderful Things Are Happening. As I yielded to understanding that God teaches all, that God is all, that I reflect Him, I let go of some of the concerns that have come up. I asked that God instruct, and I just accepted that I am God's reflection, and I could only listen for His voice, lest my footsteps stray. And this was wonderful. I spoke with my practitioner about this and realized that by sharing testimonies such as this, I can help others who may be in the field of creative teaching. So today I made sure I was out of the way and found there was an ease with all my drawings and the teachings. Thank you so much for making it possible to listen to the readings, many readings on the website, throughout the night or during the day. Thank you all Plainfield workers and supporters who are led to be still, to listen to the still small voice and go forward. I'm happy to be here tonight and thank Mrs. Eddie, our Father, Mother, God, Christ Jesus, and everyone who has worked so hard to support this truth going out to the world. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
Good evening. I have a few testimonies tonight. The first from Colorado. I just want to say simply that I have enjoyed better health since I found the readings of Science and Health on the Plainfield website. I appreciated the reader's voice and delivery first. Then I realized that unlike the loop played by the organization, I could choose what I want to hear and even stop or repeat a point. Then the sense of liberty to think about the content in my own way began to ease a terrifically despotic expectation for conformity to certain organizational expectations. I improved physically and mentally more than I have in a quarter of a century. I have to work for myself because I do think differently even from the Plainfield people, but it has helped me so much because I can work with the ideas of Science and Health as I understand them. I now work with ideas I understand and that I hope will come to fruition in steady health as I am able to make what I know to be true the rule instead of the exception. Thank you very much for all this church does. And California, thank you for the roundtable session this morning. That was March 31st. Since I have been attending the Plainfield Church live live events and reading the website materials just for about 2 weeks now, I feel as though many of the inconsistencies between my personal experience and what I was being taught by practitioners and teachers from the Boston Church are resolving. I was led to the Plainfield Church through a series of angel thoughts that directed me to start reading a book of Edward Kimball's lectures and eventually contacting the church by phone. I have so much gratitude for everyone in the Plainfield Christian Science Church. I also read the New Jersey Supreme Court's opinion in Christian Science Board of Directors versus Evans. I have always loved the Boston Church and have felt guilty for questioning the integrity of its board and recognizing weakness in some of its teachers. Of course, there is plenty of integrity and strength to be found there, but human will seems to have had too much authority in its operation. It is inspiring to see firsthand that Plainfield's continued perseverance through that kind of attack from fellow Christian scientists. I'm still digesting the revelation of all this drama, to be perfectly honest. But I imagine that in Mrs. Eddy's home, the teaching more closely resembled that of the Plainfield Christian Science Church. Boot camp is right. I am still making the adjustment to the Plainfield approach, which I find very scrutinizing and watchful. I appreciate Jeremy's comment during the roundtable about how at first you have to sort of fake it till you make it through the adjustment. The watching points are new to me, and they are challenging me to take my thought to a deeper, more precise place that has no room for lingering false beliefs. Thank you for all your work in maintaining Christian Science as it was given by Mrs. Eddy, and in the face of so much adversity. Happy Easter. And then this, I think this is Ohio. Last night's readings, and this is referring to Wednesday, a week ago's readings, were so uplifting and beautiful. Such lovely passages for Holy Week. You know, it was 2 years ago when, thanks to a Plainfield Bible study, I did a lot of research on the Holy Week, and that was when I found out that Jesus is entirely in the whole of the Old Testament. That was the first time I fell in love with the Old Testament. Once I saw that Jesus was interwoven throughout the whole Old Testament, that's when I began to truly study it, and I want to see and understand all the things Jesus referred to in the Old Testament. So I'm truly grateful for that Bible study 2 years ago. Easter blessings to you all. And then a testimony from Massachusetts. I began having a pain in one side of my jaw that extended all the way around my mouth on that side. At first I ignored it, but it didn't go away, so I tried to pray, remembering all that I've been learning in science. But I often found myself speculating as to what this could be. One thought that came to me was neuralgia. I was led to look up everything Mrs. Eddy has said about nerves. On page 392 of Science and Health, she says, if you believe in inflamed and weak nerves, you are liable to an attack from that source. You will call it neuralgia, but we call it a belief. This was helpful to me as it put any pain or physical discomfort into the realm of belief rather than reality. However, the situation went on for several days until it became quite debilitating. Then I recalled that we are taught here constantly to be forceful in the denunciation of error and the declaration of truth. I realized that my arguments had been somewhat half-baked. From then on, I took a much stronger stand, even speaking out loud to error and refusing to accept it. The next morning, I felt normal, but over the next 2 days, the error tried to reassert itself, and each time I declared the truth and refused to be taken in. Finally, the pain just disappeared into the nothingness from which it came, and I've been perfectly comfortable ever since. I'm so thankful to God for leading me to Christian Science. Looking back, I feel He had been nudging me in that direction for many years, but I just wasn't ready. It wasn't until I found myself in a dark black hole mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that I became receptive. My deep gratitude to all the selfless workers in this blessed Plainfield Church who are devoting their lives to the spread of pure Christian Science to a hungry world. And my thanks to all the testifiers. Your demonstrations bless not only you, but are all a great source of inspiration and encouragement. Thank you so very much. Sincerely. So thank you very much for those readings tonight. Yes, on the beautiful Sermon on the Mount, which truly Mrs. Eddy has said we should study it every week, and the whole thing, because it's sort of a creed to live by. And if we all lived by it, what a wonderful world this would be, as the song goes. So I'm very grateful for these deep lessons we learn here in this church, how to obey and love God more. Thank you all for the beautiful meeting, for your testimonies, and have a good night.
Thank you.